Welcome everybody once again back to our Soapbox Church. As usual, just finished the singing and now we're going to get to spend some time hearing from one of our members about their lives. Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Phil and Miriam Warsnop, who are from Brisbane, Australia. You guys have had an active and passionate life serving the Lord, particularly in the mission work. Could you start with telling us about your history and your spiritual foundation?
Well, both Miriam and I are, I don't know, at least third generation people who believe in God. I'm from New Zealand, and my mother said, make sure you don't marry somebody from Australia. And so being a good son, I married somebody from Australia. So Miriam and I have spent part of our life in New Zealand, part of our life in Australia, and various parts of our lives in mission fields overseas. I'm 69 and Miriam is 67, and by occupation I'm a teacher, and Miriam's had a range of occupations, and she's run her own business and been doing tax and dressmaker and all sorts of things. I guess we've always believed in God, always tried to do the right thing. We've been through the Sunday school. Both of us were baptized when we were, I don't know, I think I was 18. Miriam was 16, I think. And, we went through the youth circles and various, going to Bible studies and Bible schools and things like that. So we've always had a pretty high involvement, I guess, in the things of God. And but it's not really about us. It's the opportunities which were given to us. We know that God's the one who really does the work. We can sow and somebody else can water, but it's actually God that gives the increase. So although we can say, hey, this is what's happened in our lives, we don't want to hold ourselves up as anything special, because it's mainly what God has guided us into. And I guess it's a real thing of saying, hey, we're in this situation. What will be the best for us in that situation? And at present, we're living in Ipswich, which is an okay city in Australia. But at present, we think, oh, well, it would be nice to live somewhere else. But here, we've got such an involvement, as Miriam will go on later, with the Sudanese and the African community, that if we moved to somewhere which was nice for us to live, well, what would be the point? The work is here where we are, and if we moved somewhere else, well, who is going to do the work with the African community here if it's not us? And that's just the way it has happened. So I'll go into a little bit more about our thoughts and reasons for preaching, probably towards the end where we were summing up, but I'll just leave it there for now. Thanks, Guy.
No, thank you for that introduction, Phil. So you mentioned your age, and you're not old, Phil, but clearly you've been around a little bit longer than some of us, and you were talking about getting baptized at the age of 18. So if I understand correctly, it was about 1979 that you went to Indonesia to do mission work, and this was the start of a long ministry. Why did you want to get into mission work? And there must be sort of something that kicked it off for you, or a reason behind that, because usually this is not everybody's calling. Not every Christian wants to do this thing.
Well, now it's my turn. In 79, I suppose the opportunity came up for us to go to Indonesia, and because Philip was a teacher, somebody we knew in one of the ecclesias here in Australia he was working in a government program outside of Jakarta, and their children attended an international school, and they were looking for like qualified teachers. So we sort of, it was a joint thing of going up there, seeing, getting to travel, seeing what the job was like. At the same time, there was somebody else going up there to be with a newfound ecclesia just in the early stages. And as it worked out, our visa was only to be a month. And somehow or other, the powers that be gave us a 3-month visa. So we were up there for 3 months, and as it worked out, they ended up not needing an extra teacher at this international school. So we were down with a new group of brothers and sisters in this very central of Java. And many of those people and brothers and sisters in that early stages had come from being Islamic background or and changing where they found like the Christadelphian belief in that country. So we got to stay there 3 months. We learned a new way of life, that the biggest thing that they taught us was pray for your daily food, because our life in the Western world, you always had food in your cupboard, whereas we met people who literally did pray. They didn't know where their next meal was coming from. And it was just that basis, and got to be on the other end where we needed their help to live, communicate, start learning the language. And so we had a culture shock, but we also had a culture shock when we came back out of there. So then after that, we went back to, we returned back to New Zealand. And as it worked out, I have Crohn's disease. And so I was heading for a next hospital stay. So next one, Phil.
Thanks for that, Miriam. Yeah, awesome to hear about that. And it's just remarkable, as I'm sitting listening to you, Miriam and Phil, and I'm just seeing a husband and wife team over a number of decades doing the Lord's work together. And maybe a little bit later, I'll ask a question about how that's gone as well. But where did it lead to from here? And you've had this experience now of participating in the mission fields, and it goes on to be this history, which is quite extensive. If you'd share that with us.
Well, we were in New Zealand, and then we thought, when you're in a meeting, well, there's always other people who can take your place. And really, I don't want to focus on saying, hey, we're great because we did mission work, because there's a lot of people in your meetings or churches that do a lot of work within that, within the church or the meeting. But we sort of thought, well, we've got to know the people up in Indonesia. And about 1981, we went up there again, and we met somebody who was doing he never really came to understand the truth, but he had done a lot of translating of a lot of the books about the Bible. And he was running an English course and a business course and computer course. And got talking with him, and he said he would actually be my sponsor, so we could stay there for longer than, the maximum was 6 months then on that visa. So we arranged with him, and I would do the English part of his course, which was only about 2 hours a week I worked. He knew I didn't want to work for him, but he had to do all the preparation work and pretend that he was paying us and giving us accommodation and everything. So then we're able to, we actually met up with some other people up there who had been through the process of getting a work visa. And so they gave us the step by step how to do it, because I wouldn't have had a clue otherwise. And so it probably took about 6 months for that visa process to go through. And you go to one government department and then to another one, I think there's about 8 or 9 steps before the final approval came out. But it just gave us stability, and we were able to then be there and extend that visa up to about five years. So we were then with the ecclesia and or the church up there, and then we actually for accommodation there was a room at the back of the meeting place, and we actually used to live there, which was really, really good, because then the brothers and sisters up there, they could just drop in freely anytime and talk to us or whatever else, and it was a really good time. But it just provided a lot of stability for the members up there. And during that time, we would often have people who'd been doing correspondence courses with people in Australia, and we'd go and visit them, or arrange like Bible school study weekends and things like that. And often we would have about 3 or 4 breaking of bread meetings per week. We would have one on the Sunday morning. We'd go to a village where there was a group of members. We'd have another one out there. We'd go and visit an old brother and sister who would arrange like a Bible class for their friends, and we'd have a meeting with them. I think it was about Wednesday, and we'd go to another city for Friday. And so it was pretty full on. And during that time, I actually end up writing, according to the Bible correspondent, Bible companion. We read 3 sections of the Bible per day. I actually wrote notes on all of those chapters, just because a lot of the brothers and sisters didn't have access to concordances and things like that, so that they then got the set of notes at the beginning of every month to do their readings and have a look through those notes. And Miriam spent months, because in their Bibles they didn't have the marginal references down the middle. So Miriam got her Revised Standard Bible, which is very close to their where their Bible is translated from, and she ended up typing out all the marginal references, so that the brothers would have their Bible, and they'd also have this other book which was about the same size of the Bible, and all it had in there was all these marginal references, so they could go and find their way around the Bible. And we did quite a lot of translating work. We used to give it to one man who had been in the army, and of course when he became a Christadelphian he had left that, so he would actually do the translating. Then we had another brother who was working as a night watchman, and we used to then give all the translation to this younger brother who was working as a night watchman, and he would proofread all of that stuff. And so they end up with quite a lot of resources during the time we were there. And in about 86, we came back to Australia, and then because I'd learnt the language, I was able to teach Indonesian in the primary schools in Australia. And then about 92 or 93, I then was able to get a teacher exchange program between Queensland and Central Java. And so for 4 months, I was in where the ecclesia was in Central Java, 3 months in the capital city in that area, and 3 months in another city teaching English. So that was also just an extension of our work there.
If I may, Phil, I'd just like to interrupt. I was quite taken there with the work that Miriam did in typing out all the margin references. And as you said, it took and you started a little bit and said months.
Okay.
So obviously that did take a long time, but you don't seem like people that would just do something for the sake of doing it. You saw a need. How did you come about, Miriam, to be thinking, hell, I'm going to do this?
Oh, through Charlie.
Oh, no, what you told me.
It was actually through a young brother who just their Indonesian Bible at that stage, the only one available, was, I think it was translated, a straight translation from the Revised Standard Version. And so if he was doing his own Bible study or something for the youth group, he discovered marginal references in my Bible. Yep. And so he'd come and ask to borrow the Bible so he could use his and go through and find a marginal reference to go through, because he knew a little bit of English. No, at that stage he was like all the kids learn English in school. And so that's where we discovered that there wasn't any aid for them to find like cross-references of how to virtually go through the Bible themselves. Yeah. So then he asked me, I forget what chapter, there was one he was doing. He says, oh, could you type me up the marginal references for that book? And I think it might have been one of the epistles for John or Peter or something. And then I just did that one and found, oh, this is easy. And so just started on the rest. And even today, they still have them. You know, some of the brothers, the older ones, still using these books.
Wow. So you've kept in contact, and you know that these references that you typed up are still, I guess, being photocopied and being made available to people?
Yes, at that stage, it was only like there was no computers. It's just a good old typewriter. They used to have a Gestetner there. Some of the early ones were like you know what old Gestetners were?
Yeah, I actually took typing as a youngster. So
And then
I just got to say that you said earlier, it was real easy, but I remember how hard it is to smack that thing, across and start typing away. And it wasn't that easy.
And then later on in the the mid 80s when we were there, like the shops started opening up with photocopiers, and so you just had one to type up and go get it photocopied. And
Yeah, no, that's really
so
cool.
There was like senior Sunday school notes that anyone could use as well. So I did a lot of typing through those periods.
But had that opportunity not come about, people wouldn't have been blessed with the work that you did, and they wouldn't have had as good an understanding going forward. And, like when we build a house, we lay foundations, it's brick and mortar and stuff like this. And while you're on the missionary field, you do these little things that take a long time sometimes. Yeah. And they have such a huge impact going forward. But had you not been there, you wouldn't have participated in that. I have got another question here, if I may. Just one of the members has asked today. So how did you fund all of this? Like to just go somewhere, even back then would have cost money. You'd had to have eaten and all of this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. How did it come about that you funded this?
Oh, the funding. When we'd go there, usually the Bible mission would cover like our airfare, traveling there. Once we actually moved into the hall, there wasn't a lot of accommodation cost. But really, we were fortunate in New Zealand. The first year I was teaching, I was up in Whangarei, and then I was transferred back to Auckland. Because of that, then I became eligible for a government loan to buy a house. So we bought a house, and then whenever we've been on mission work, virtually the house whichever house it was, we would have it rented out. And because the cost of living in Indonesia is a lot less, normally we could virtually live off the rent that we were getting in from the house and also repaying the loan. So.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I think it was about the year 2000 that you returned to New Zealand for family reasons, but your mission, your preaching, your gospel spreading didn't sort of stop there, and you entered into a different sort of ministry dealing with Chinese. Could you tell us how you became involved in this and what it all involved?
Okay. I suppose in that era, lots of Chinese were coming into New Zealand. And when we got back there, we already had brother-in-law and Philip's sister and a few others from Auckland had been working with, I suppose, various Chinese, because coming out of the communists, they were actually curious. Some were curious about what was in the Bible. And they were bringing the various Chinese to their home. But you might say over that stage, they were doing courses, and they found a need to establish a little church group or an ecclesial group just to cater for that Chinese group, because we were educating them and they were going off various other places for worship. So there was like 3 ecclesias in Auckland where, because we arrived back and we hadn't actually joined any particular ecclesial group. So Philip's sister and brother-in-law, Neil, they were two from the others, and we started a little, you might say, a little ecclesial group. And so on a Sunday, we'd just have a very short breaking of bread as baptized ones ourselves. And then all the Chinese who were wanting to learn the Bible would come in. Some were just learning, initially interested learning English, because that's how we advertised, or they advertised out, learning using English. Because English, when you are teaching it, or realize when you're in another country and you can't use your English, you realize English is a difficult language, a confusing language, same word, same spelling, different meaning, And so on a Sunday nights there, and a Friday, they ran different courses at different levels of people coming in. And that's how that started. And then you might say one of the good aspects, Philip's sister, she actually passed away, but she would have seen the first baptism. Yeah.
No, that's awesome to hear. Something that I've sort of seen as I've spoken to various people who have got long-term missionary work for God is that one missionary field or type or place that you are leads into another one. Being so involved in Indonesia and then coming home and then being involved with Chinese, I'm guessing there were some similarities, some benefit to having what you'd done already help you in doing the work that you're now being led to do at that time.
Yeah, actually during that time we had, it was great to see the Chinese come in, and we actually over, I don't know, a few years we had homestays for the students. Had to come in and spend, I think it was 3 months with a family before they could go out into, living in a flat or whatever they wanted to. So I think we once calculated we had about 40 different people through the house. and they were not only Chinese, but we had Koreans, we had Russians, we had people from Thailand. But it was just one of those opportunities and of course we would take them along to whatever program was going, and it's just one of those extensions that you somehow automatically do, which is great. But the Chinese were great, but they very interested to know about it intellectually. They said the issue was when they came to the end of it, did they really have the faith or the commitment to really believe that this was the correct way, although they'd learned that. But some of the Chinese contacts were really good because they've gone back to China and continued the work there. Other ones have come to Australia and still doing the preaching work there. And there was one really great sister, when just her preaching effort, when she got on the bus, she would actually look around the bus to see where the best place would be to sit, to talk to somebody, to invite them along to the Bible and English classes. So, it was just a very simple thing, but, she was a great sister. Every time she'd be bringing somebody else along to the class, which was great.
That's fantastic. As I'm listening to your testimony, I'm just hearing where there's a will, there's a way, and God is really up for the challenge of making ways, and it's great to hear. So about 2007, you were seconded to various countries around the world to do work. You decided to check out Duncan Easter in Latvia. What came of that contact?
Oh, it's mine. Well, believe it or not, I ended up getting a job with a software company. I'm a computer dummy, but in Australia, I had worked for what they call barter exchanges, of how businesses can use that within their businesses. And when we went to New Zealand, I sort of fell into a job where it was a software company who had started up purely to make software for, you might say, trade exchanges or barter exchanges and debt collecting agency. And not knowing, luckily I had a Chinese student who lived with us who taught me everything about computers. But I ended up learning this company's software. And so I got to go every time they started selling it worldwide. I got to travel with a computer programmer and a software developer. And I was the actual end user of this software. So I got to do I told him I'd give him 2 years of my life, you might say, because I knew my Crohn's disease would eventually flare up and you had to get back to, you might say, a reasonable hospital. But through that, we had the opportunity of being in Turkey, and they gave Philip a job. So, because I was up there, going to be there for, like virtually a year almost. So Phil got a job. He flew up to Turkey, and then the company that was going to train, there was a delay, and so Phil was at a loose end, and thought, oh, he's so close up to Latvia, we'll go up to Duncan. And then I followed as well. We were up there for a Bible school. But at that stage, we'd heard different, you might say, more negative stories. And we thought, this isn't, this doesn't sound right. And so we thought, so we're so close, we'll just go visit them. And it was great.
I actually lived with Duncan and Cindy, I don't know, for a couple of weeks. And it was really great, because Duncan would say, Duncan would actually work during the night, so the time zones are right for talking to various people from different countries. And he says, can you pack up these courses? And in the morning, the sheet slid under the door, and I'd go away and make these courses and post them and things like that. But it was really great. And then I was out at the refugees building that Duncan was making out of an old stable, and that was interesting as well, because I was working there helping out, and the main builder could speak German. And I couldn't speak any German, but we sort of got by. And but also that when I was there was this really great couple, and they didn't want me staying at this motel, which was close to where Duncan was developing the stable into a conference centre and refugee centre. So they said, come stay at our place, and they could hardly speak any English. And they had 5 or 6 kids, and so they moved into one room, and then they gave me the other room. And then they said, because I'd accepted the truth, and virtually all of the area where they lived belonged to one church, almost the whole village almost ostracized them. And they said, hey, if we give out these flyers, nobody will want to read them. Can you go and give out these flyers? And I said, yeah, fine. So I went around all the village and these high-rise buildings where you just put the letters in the letter boxes. And actually some people responded to that. And I thought, but it was just, to me, a really great thing that they still wanted people to come to the truth, and they knew that if they had said anything to them, they'd just, they don't want to hear. But because it was me giving them out, they were more receptive to receive those flyers, and then sent in to Duncan for information. So that was really great.
Yeah, it's good when people recognize their limitations and they can ask for help. It's awesome.
Great.
So around 2012, you saw the need for a more one-on-one approach to Bible teaching with African refugee migrants. I understand that this has been quite a long-term association. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I suppose it's been because we've been in other countries where you realise people who are learning English and how English is a difficult language. When we were back in Australia, and the local church we were going to decided to, do these Bible courses, but the English was too, you might say, too wordy, very confusing for people who did start coming along to it, that English wasn't their first language. And so through that, you'll meet like young John Chol. His mum was actually another African lady who got a flyer in her letterbox, who then asked young Chol's mum to come along to one of these courses. And of course, his dad came along, but the English was too difficult for them to grasp and understand. So at that stage, we started going to, or Philip started trying to do the course a week ahead. But through that, we just got to know, knowing the African community and the difficulties that they were facing. And some of them were, I suppose it's part of teaching the Bible like Jesus. You got to know them as people, handle some of their problems, like the simple little problems of phoning up the phone company to work out why they were being paid for a service they weren't getting on their bill, and just being the English ears for them, because they were so easy targets for scams, you name it. And so through that, I got to know young John Chol's mum. We used to do sewing together, etc. And then about a year later, there was a lay pastor in their community, and he made a special trip over to see us, and wondering what was up. And then he says, "I've been watching you for a year." I suppose he was trying to figure out what was our
ulterior motive.
A motive of why we were helping them, etc. And they knew that was based on the Bible. And then he says, "I want you to teach me the Bible." Now, through that group of the South Sudanese, they do not have a full Old Testament Bible translated officially into a complete Bible book. They've got the New Testament in that language. So some of the books of the Old Testament, they just didn't know. And this gentleman, his name was John also, he wanted to be able to learn what was in the Old Testament, and to learn it for himself, not to be told by somebody about what was in it. So that was the beginning, really, of the community. And then I suppose they ended up trust was the biggest thing, and it has been continued. They trust you. Like, I've been along to bank appointments with them, helping them with interviews, typing up CVs and all that. Not just it's like every aspect of their life, you might say, but the Bible is the basis of it.
No, thanks very much for that. Just a question from one of our members. How would you say doing mission work has broadened your outlooks on life and future and purpose and all of that sort of thing?
I think it's just a realization that, especially when you were amongst poorer people, you just see, hey, what are the real values? What things are valuable in life and what is just stuff. And unfortunately, too many people just go for the stuff. But yeah, it's really just, it's that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And unless you've got some sort of relationship, then they're not going to trust you. So I guess it's just trying to help them out in whatever area of life they need help on. And just recently we've had loads of clothing, linen and things like that we're just going to go to the dump, landfill, and we have been able to just share that around with families, that because a lot of them have large families, and being able to share that around and say, hey, choose what you want, keep what you want, give us back what you don't want. And it's just stuff that just happens in our lives that just helps their lives as well, and I guess makes the total idea of the gospel more real. And this, so probably similarly, we have a food bank here in in the city, and you know, every day there's got X amount of food that's left over, and quite often we'll get some of that and go and do a bit of a run around the 5 or 6 families that we know that need help, or the food will just be, you know, help them out. And you know, it's costing us nothing more than that, our time. So that's what we do.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you get enormous enjoyment out of doing.
Yes. I suppose I have you might say, a sewing skill. And you'd thought about starting up a sewing group for the African ladies, and you think, where to, how to rent, and then it's amazing. God brings certain people into your lives, and you can either do something, you know, take the opportunity when you meet that person, or opportunities that just get plonked. You might say, here you are, and you can run with it. And it was just a simple newspaper article in a local free newspaper that had a community house here in Ipswich. They happened to run a sewing group, but mainly refugee ladies. So I went along there just as a helper. And then within, I suppose, 6 months, the other helpers dropped out. And then there was me, which has been good. Sometimes we've had to use our phone for translating. It depends on what level, but one way or other, I've been able to give the ladies like a Bible. They're all learning English. Even Duncan's dad put out the calendars, and that was a great source that I was able to give these ladies. And one lady is originally from Afghanistan, so she's Islamic, but she accepted the calendar, especially when you tell her that the one common thing, I was telling her, I'm not like normal Christians. I believe that God is one. So that, like we knew from Indonesia, that was the starting point of what the brothers would tell us, how they came to learn about God, was that they'd gone around different churches after leaving the Islamics, and the one thing that attracted it to the Christadelphian faith was that God was one. There was one God. So it's a good beginning. But it's making the most of, I suppose, your talents, but using it how to tell people about the hope of the Bible, but God's got plan with this earth.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Miriam. I was actually just about to ask about, you know, the other side to your lives as your practical skills, because, you know, it's great being on the mission fields and all of that sort of thing, but you still got to live, you still got to have a job, all of that sort of thing. And you were just mentioning about your sewing skills. I understand that you did other classes and trade shows together, a plasterboard repair sort of scenario developed. Maybe tell us a little bit about that as well.
We should do that. Okay. If I can hold this up, you can see that. This is just one of the flyers. You can see that. And then also on that, we have advertised about the Bibles down there as well, which is advertising the online side. Or on this was another Miriam's Mark II one where we had.
Can you just hold it up a bit higher there, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
And that was the other side. And so we would just get these distributed around, and so there's advertising the business, but it's also advertising, the free Bibles and the sites there, and it's just one of those ones you think. And the only strange reaction I've had to that, and it's quite good, because then when you go in to do a job and they phone up and say, can you fix my plasterboard or the pigeons or whatever else, they know that you believe in God. because they've already seen the flyer. And some of them, yeah, I give them a free Bible and things like that. And but there's only one strange one I had was somebody who was a Catholic, and they said, "Oh, can you do this job for me?" And they said, "We're Catholic. Will you still do the job for us?" Yeah, as if I wouldn't do it because we're Catholics, sort of thing. But in some ways, we actually just use the business to be able to promote the Bibles. And so when we do a show, you know, we have all the advertisers and all that sort of stuff. We've got a gazebo that we've made, and then we've got a backdrop that goes there. And normally my business has a very small table on the side because that's not the main concern, but we have the Bibles in there. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah.
Because Miriam's the one who does it.
Okay. That's the Bible packs we give. There's another sister in here in Ipswich who rides a bike around advertising the Bible packs. But it was actually at a trade show where people seemed to be reluctant to come up and get a Bible, you know, just little New Testament ones, until the one year we were beside what they call the show bags, you know, which is like they got lollies, etc., or, you know, different things in them. So I just changed the sign on our packs to not a free Bible, but a free Bible
Sample.
Yeah, pack or sample pack. And then it seemed to people lost that shyness or embarrassment or something of coming up and taking one. So usually we put in, I happen to have some pens. Now I have advertising the app goes in it. And then through this, we've just got like a little fast finder, which goes into Jesus's parables, words that Jesus said, miracles. It's like a little ready reckoner. And then just a whole lot of verses subject with Bible quotes, really. Yeah, so they're quite, and they look quite good, I think, done up in a cellophane bag. Yeah, so Phil, we usually keep a couple in the car. Phil has them in the van, because some of the jobs he's at, you just start talking to, you just strike up a conversation with a lot of the Africans. Which church do you go to? You know, or some of the African younger ones will say, "Oh, we're not going to African church. It goes all day." You know, yeah. But
No, fantastic. It looks like you guys over the years have grown in experience to know what works and what doesn't work. But you're handing these out in Australia?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to trade shows in Australia where there are sort of hardened Australians?
Yes.
And people are actually picking these up?
It's surprising. The last one we didn't do it last year because of COVID. The one before, and we were surprised at actually the number of younger people and almost like the teenagers coming to stop by and get a Bible. They'd go and say to their parents, "Oh, can I pick one up?" And their parents say, "Fine." You know, there wasn't an issue. And we also had the police liaison workers, or the Sudanese, and I think he was Samoan, and they came along and actually wanted a complete Bible. And I was doing one job at one house, and this man was a pastor of his own little church in his garage. And when I was doing this plasterboard, I thought, that Bible looks familiar. And I picked it up, and it was one of Duncan's Bibles.
Yeah. Oh,
and somebody had actually written in it, this is a gift from heaven, especially for you. But they didn't put down who the person was who got this Bible and obviously passed it on to the pastor. And then when I was looking at it, the pastor's daughter came in and says, "Oh, yeah, that's Dad's favorite Bible." And so I guess because it's got all the study notes down the end of each page that Duncan has written, you know, this pastor really liked the ease, I guess, of being able to give talks using Duncan's information. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Okay.
Got another question for you about your trade shows and giving away the Bible packs. these trade shows and your business is how you put food on the table. And one, as a Christian and being in business or at work, may feel a little, oh, I don't know if I really want to, put it fully out there, like go to that blog.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't get as much business as, I could have done, like I believe and I love you, God, but, maybe that's not for me. Tell me a bit about, because obviously you got to a place where you were like, this is how we roll. This is what we do because we are staunch for God. And, you tell us how that all worked out.
Oh, with my business, I have to have liability insurance. And when you go to these trade shows, each stall holder has to have their own liability insurance. So which is great, because if it was just a group saying, hey, we're going to have a show, then they would have the added expense of having to arrange that insurance, which is, I don't know, $1,000 or so a year. And so I virtually, my display is only only excuse to be able to have the main show there. But what I found out is almost every time I'll get business from that, even though I'm not pushing it, which is at least equivalent to whatever it has cost us. So there's never any real issue. And if somebody says, I'm not going to use you because you're a Christian or something, well, so what? We get enough work without it. And probably because of our work with the Sudanese community, we get loads of work from that, because ordinary plasterboard walls and about 7 or 8 kids just don't mix. And so you always have doorknobs going through the whole the wall, or a ball kicked in the wrong place or something. So it has never been an issue of, will we do this and it may affect our business, or the other way around it. It's not a concern, really.
Yeah, I've heard this quite a bit about people who step out the way you have in faith. That I'm guessing what you're sort of saying is that God sees what you're doing. And as we read in scripture, I think it's in Samuel where he says, if you'll honor me, I will honor you.
Yeah.
God is going to come to the party basically and say, okay, I'm actually ruling and reigning on earth, and you've got faith that, by promoting me and my ways and trying to spread, the blessing that I can be to all of humanity, I'm going to see to it that, you don't go hungry. I'm going to see to it that, you're blessed and that you love life, and that you have an awesome long marriage together doing the work of God, those blessings, I'm sure you would say, so far outweigh any work that you may have missed out on.
Yes. I suppose we're probably at the age as well where you start getting rid of stuff, or stuff is no longer important. I've never been one on, you might say, of people who go for brand names, or you're all going to one day Christ will come, and it's like everything in this life is gone. I don't know whether that answered your question.
No, it did. A good friend of mine talks about making an eternal difference, and even people who have very little care for others at all, they want to make a difference. They want to make a name for themselves. They want to leave a legacy. They want to be remembered. Because there's a common fate for everybody, who is born of a woman. We're all going to die. And, so to be remembered for something is something we would aspire to as human beings. But the difference that yourselves have made has quite often been an eternal difference. It's a difference that carries on past this life into, the life to come, which is when our Lord Jesus returns and brings the kingdom, and then you get to see people, the fruit of your labor, the increase that God provided into that labor is now sight. It's an amazing thing. Just as we're sort of finishing off, what was the greatest thing that you learned? Is there one thing that you can pin and say, you know, this was the hole in one, you know, for in the golfing industry scenario for you in your ministry?
I suppose the most interesting one just recently has been John or Joel. Just the way it was somebody else, not us, who actually just sowed that seed into him. You know, it was an Uber driver who asked him, hey, have you been properly baptized? And that caused John to start to think. And we've almost relived through the learning of the truth because of Joel's experience. But, you know, basically, I think it is that, you know, it's almost like Solomon said in Ecclesiastes that, you know, if you're sowing seed, you know, if you wait till all the circumstances are perfect before you start, you'll never start. And that God will bless it, whether it's going to be a fine day or a wet day or whatever. But also the thing of, you know, not prejudging. You know, we can't say whether, hey, this person is good or bad, or we know that from 1 Corinthians 6, God can change people who are a long way away from the truth to be right there with us. And also the basic idea of loving your neighbor. If we're in the position of not knowing the truth, how would we feel if somebody did know the truth and hadn't really bothered taking the time to do that or to tell us? And I guess just a focus of wherever we are in life, whether young, middle-aged or older, just saying, hey, what can I do in this situation at this time? And almost planning to do something rather than nothing.
And probably the one thing I've found all the way, I suppose, working with like Ipswich is a very multicultural little city of different nationalities, of a big majority of Africans, etc. And sometimes you might feel down yourself or something, you know, you wish you'd talk to one person and something else happens and they go another way. But then all of a sudden, when you're feeling down, God unexpectedly just plonks something in front of you that gets your enthusiasm going, and it leads you off in a different way as well, you know, to another person, another household. Yeah. And through that, we've met, I suppose, we're starting to understand who's related to who, because Australia has, of the refugees that have come in, the Australian government has tried to bring in other family members or relations into as like family groups, you might say, even though they'll live there. But yeah, they can teach us a lot as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Like it's been really awesome listening to your testimony and just exploring how you've interacted with God, His Spirit, the work that He's had prepared for you from, you know, so long ago. Anybody can be involved. You just gotta want to put your hand to the plow and start small. And you know, you started somewhere, and now you've got this history, you know, that spans decades of being involved and showing your love and shining your light. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for that.